Welcome back to Ultimate Movie Recaps. Thanks for supporting us. Today I am showing a 2017 French-Spanish science fiction horror film titled Cold Skin. Watch out for the spoilers, just enjoy and take care. As the movie starts in the year 1914, our unnamed lead character, a young Englishman, has been sailing for 67 days in order to reach a far-off island in the South Atlantic, where he will spend a year working as a weather observer. The captain asks him what he's fleeing from on the last day of the voyage when he's smoking beside the railing, since that's the first question everyone asked him when he made the decision to sail on the sea. However, the Englishman stays silent. Once they arrive at the island, the whole crew assists the Englishman in moving his belongings to the cabin where he will be residing for one whole year. The Englishman remarks that there are no birds in the area, and the captain wonders why there is also no weather official to greet them. The captain fears for the safety of the Englishman when they approach the cabin since it seems to have been abandoned for a long time. However, the guy spots the lighthouse from the window. The Englishman rebuts the captain's opinion that he should leave and insists on staying. The captain assists the Englishman in his investigation of the region, even though it is not his responsibility. They come upon a fountain with the inscription "Gruner owns this fountain" engraved on the rocks while traveling to a lighthouse. The captain joins the Englishman by himself after sending his crew back to the boat. They arrive at the lighthouse a short while later, which looks crudely defended. When no one responds to their banging and calling, they break in by slamming the door open and go upstairs, where they discover Gruner, an elderly man, asleep. Gruner says something along the lines of returning to the water before rising from bed. When the captain asks about the last weather observer, Elder Vigeland, who he should be bringing back with him, Gruner says that Vigeland died of typhus and that he just disappeared one day and was never seen again. The two guys go since Gruner isn't of any assistance. The captain attempts to give the Englishman his gun before going back to his boat since he still wants to remain. The Englishman declines his offer, and after saying goodbye, he goes back to his cabin to start setting it up and putting together his weather equipment. He discovers a journal left by the previous owner and chooses to read it by the fire. The first few pages are quite routine. They include the typical observations about the island's plant and animal life, as well as a picture of a lady wearing a bridal gown. Mrs. Vigeland and the words "love, love, love" are written on the back of the image, identifying the lady as the spouse of his predecessor. However, soon odd things start to happen. There are sketches and notes of bizarre marine monsters that attack people, along with a chilling statement, "Darwin was incorrect." The next day the Englishman discovers rings of rocks packed with shells on the sand, and the shapes are too exact to be a natural phenomenon that occurred by accident. Later, he takes meteorological readings on the beach. He hears some unusual sounds outside the cabin later that night while eating supper. He hears the sounds of growls and banging on the wood wall. As he slowly moves toward the door, a monster's paw that looks like the pictures in the journal suddenly appears under it. He hurries into the basement and shuts the door behind him after hearing more of them crawling all over the cabin. He peers through a hole in the wood to see what is happening above, and when he discovers a monster staring at him through the same hole, he pokes it with a knife. The Englishman chooses to spend the night in the basement and ties the door handle to the steps since they are still outside. The next morning, as he leaves the cabin, he notices the blood on the floor and strange tracks on the sand leading towards the beach. He runs to the lighthouse, but this time he is unable to unlock the door. Finally, the elderly man opens the window after repeated calls and hurls water at him. When the Englishman requests refuge in the lighthouse, he tells him to stay on the boat and turns him away. A little while later, the Englishman fortifies the cabin, anticipating the attack of sea monsters during the night. He encircles the cabin with a circle of books and wood covered in lamp oil and seals all the windows. Further, he also shuts the door and loads the weapon once he is inside. As the monsters arrive, they quickly jump on the windows and doors, and the reinforcements that had been put there earlier start to fall apart. The Englishman initially has some success shooting them, but there are far too many. So he uses a lamp to light a torch, which he then tosses into the circle of wood and paper he had put around the cabin. This causes a fire, which he is unable to control but which drives the monsters away. The guy must leave the cabin because it also catches fire, further burning his hand in the process. He spends the night behind some beach rocks, where it starts to rain as soon as he arrives. The next morning, when he returns, he sees the cabin demolished. He grabs the weapon and creeps around to follow Gruner to the fountain after grabbing a handkerchief to cover his injured hand. One of those sea monsters, who just happens to be female, jumps on him as he prepares to shoot her. In response, he pulls her away and points a gun at it. Gruner discovers them and aims towards the Englishman in return. However, he doesn't give up, and points the weapon at her, and by frightening the beast, he gets Gruner to lay down his gun. The Englishman responds that it is obvious what he wants when Gruner asks him. On the other side, when the Englishman has told Gruner about all the things he has to share, Gruner reassures him that the creature is safe by summoning her over, which she does, and Gruner eventually decides to let him stay with him in the lighthouse. Before heading to the cabin, Gruner gives the Englishman the name Friend. They start to gather as many supplies as they can as they reach their cabin. Friend says to Gruner that he believes the last weatherman wasn't killed by typhus but rather was left alone in the cabin and was taken by the monsters. He believes it should be considered a crime under Gruner's record, but Gruner neither confirms nor denies it. He just informs him that they must go since it is getting late. A few days later, we discover Friend resting in the lighthouse. The creature licks his burnt hand, which awakens him. Further, her saliva has healing capabilities. Meanwhile, Gruner comes into the lighthouse and informs him that he has been sleeping for almost 2 days and has even peed in his trousers. They count the available ammo as they climb the stairs and talk about the sea monsters. Gruner does not actually speak to her, he merely gives orders. She behaves like a puppy. No matter how nasty her master is, it will always come running back to him. She astounds Friend, who observes her while discussing the idea that isolated aquatic species develop separately in order to survive. This speech doesn't sit well with Gruner, so he interrupts to take him to the balcony and explains that both artificial and natural light frighten the animals. If civilization is so wonderful, why did Friend abandon it? Gruner wonders in response to Friend's question about why he didn't depart with the boat that had carried him 4 days earlier. He likes it more here since he can control his own future. Friend responds that he is welcome to remain if he chooses, but he will fire a signal for the first boat to pass by. They are not on a trade route, and the lighthouse was solely constructed to divert money, therefore, Gruner thinks the proposal is absurd. Days go by as Friend attempts to rebuild his life once again. As he looks around the lighthouse, he sets up a hammock for himself and finds an old diving set in a trunk. He even begins writing the days of the week on the wall and deals with the creature amicably. Gruner orders him to collect his rifle when it becomes dark and brings him to the balcony, where torches are lit and the beacon lights are glowing brilliantly. Armed from head to toe, Gruner explains to Friend how to fight the animals and when to fire. It's necessary to only shoot when they are nearby, and killing only a few of them is sufficient since they will then devour one another. Friend thinks that the sea monsters are not attacking but just trying to save their companion, as they can hear their own creature making noises from the balcony above them. When the monsters show up, Gruner attacks them right away, but Friend is so scared that he runs into the house and passes out. The next morning, Gruner wakes up Friend and tells him that he will not accept any excess baggage as a roommate, regardless of how much food and drink he brings. He orders him to go get some water, and Friend completely complies. He finds Gruner sleeping with the beast when he gets back to the lighthouse. However, later that night, Gruner offers Friend one last opportunity. He is led to the balcony the second time. Gruner gets back into the lighthouse when the monsters arrive. He locks Friend outside and shuts the door, leaving him defenseless. He opens the door once again the next morning to see Friend still alive and triumphant despite being covered in blood. The two guys settle on a regular regimen. Friend does odd jobs every day to pay for his stay in the lighthouse, and at night, they protect themselves against intruders. Friend recalls his motivation for visiting the island, to discover calm in emptiness. However, he has instead discovered torment. He wonders why the monsters don't attack every evening as it has been 2 weeks since he last saw them. He has begun to collect whale bones for carving while on his daily hunt for wood. Friend is baffled by Gruner's ability to regularly battle these animals while still having a sexual relationship with one of them. The feel of her cold skin ought to be disturbing, but he also finds himself becoming close to the creature and gives her a name, Anaris. The two guys are playing chess one evening when they both fail to turn on the lights. When the monsters strike, they almost overwhelm them, but they manage to barely escape by barricading themselves within the lighthouse, despite Gruner's legs suffering damage in the process. The next morning, while Anaris tends to the wound, Friend warns that, with their ammo running low, they won't be able to hold out for much longer. He discovers a necklace on the beach there, and then he notices a boat out in the distance. He dashes into the lighthouse and returns with the flare gun to fire. But Gruner forbids him from shooting, claiming that he can defend himself, has all he needs, and doesn't want additional people on the island. Anaris comes and growls at him to demand that he leave Friend alone since he pounced on Friend to stop him. A few days later, Friend overhears Gruner yelling and striking Anaris as she hurriedly exits the lighthouse. Friend follows her outside and drops his gun on a rock before slowly approaching her and demonstrating his carved whale bone boat. Anaris recognizes the figure and directs Friend to a hidden spot on the beach where a sunken boat is resting on the sand. When he gets back to the lighthouse, he tells Gruner about it, but Gruner already knew, so it was futile to inform Friend. If he leaves on the boat, he would die from hunger or from a monster attack. When asked about the boat's history, Gruner claims that a Portuguese man who had survived a shipwreck and been slain by the monsters had used it. While Gruner thinks the explosives were being trafficked, further he suspects that they could be waterlogged aboard the ship. Friend leads him inside and shows him the diving suit he had discovered. He thinks he can use it to find the explosives that are underwater, which could help get rid of monsters. Gruner declines, considering it to be an impossible task. The next day, Friend makes the decision to continue working on repairing the boat, only to get sidetracked when he hears Anaris singing in the water pond. Gruner gets jealous when Friend takes off his shirt and jumps into the water to join her. Later, when they get back to the lighthouse, Gruner throws the diving suit on Friend and says that he had changed his mind. In order to get rid of Friend and claim Anaris for himself, he took this action. They board the boat and go to the wreckage site. Friend dons the diving gear and descends to the bottom of the water, where he locates the dynamite boxes and ties them to a rope that Gruner uses to pull them aboard the boat. Suddenly, two small sea monsters appear out of nowhere while he is working and knock him to the ground. Friend tugs the rope 3 times, signaling for assistance as he slowly runs out of oxygen, but Gruner willfully ignores his request. Consequently, Friend is left with no alternative but to take off his diving suit and swim back up to the boat. When they return to the lighthouse, as they examine the dynamite boxes, they discover one box waterlogged. They bury them outside the lighthouse in 2 lines, one of which is very close to the walls. As winter approaches, snow begins to fall. There are no creature assaults for a week. One morning, Friend finds Gruner had spent the previous night on the balcony with his hand on the dynamite detonator, nearly freezing to death. He pulls him out of it and sends him inside, but before he follows, he unplugs the detonator's cables. 3 further weeks go by without any monster attacks. Gruner strikes Anaris, believing that she has warned her friends, and determines that a trap has to be laid. That evening, Friend spends his time at the open door in a lamp-filled area, while Gruner drags Anaris up to the balcony and forces her to sing. When the wind accidentally knocks out a few lamps near the door, the animals use this as a chance to get inside the lighthouse and attack. Gruner attempts in vain to set off the detonator as Friend moves upstairs and shoots them. Until Friend arrives to link the wires to the detonator, he must protect himself as best he can. When he's finished, he pulls a lever, and the farthest line of dynamite explodes, killing the majority of the monsters. Gruner is overjoyed, and despite Friend's warnings, he pushes the lever again, detonating the nearest line of explosives and nearly killing the 2 of them. They walk outside in the morning to see the damage. Gruner is seen killing any animals that are still alive, but Friend can't kill one of them because it has a bone necklace, which is a sign of intelligence. The necklace is thrown into the sea by Gruner. The animals don't appear that night, but the 2 men hear the melancholy noises Anaris is making somewhere near the shore. She was weeping in a net when Gruner discovered her as a newborn, and he says this is how she usually behaves, crying a lot but always returning. Friend assumes she is in grief. The next day, as Friend strolls down the shore, he spots 2 little sea monsters. He makes something for them, a circle of stones on the beach with the bone boat he carved in the center, in an effort to be cordial. He then goes back to the lighthouse, where Gruner is reloading their weapons with fictitious ammunition so they may continue to incite panic among the creatures. Friend dismisses him and walks to the balcony to check on his small bone boat. He looks through his binoculars, and it was still there, where he left it. The next morning, Friend discovers that Gruner has passed out from drinking too much and that a deck of cards has fallen on the ground. He discovers the same image of the lady he had seen in his cabin inside the card box, except this time, her husband is with her instead of just her. The reverse of this image also has the phrases love, love, love. Then, Friend realizes that Gruner is a made-up name and that the prior weatherman hadn't really passed away. Gruner, the former weatherman, was driven insane by loneliness and sorrow. Friend chooses to remove the day count he had been maintaining off the wall after becoming upset by this realization. The creatures had taken the little bone boat, which Friend discovers later that day when he is strolling along the shore. Friend leaves the torch he's carrying in the stone circle after seeing the little creature in the distance and steps back with his hands up, to indicate that he doesn't intend any harm. The small creature then approaches him, and soon numerous others follow, including Anaris, who seems to be confident. The youngster is ready to give Friend the bone boat, but Gruner shatters the tender moment with a rifle shot. Friend advises him to go back since the animals are truly kind and they were mistaken. Gruner commands Anaris to return to the lighthouse despite his advice, but she disobeys. When Gruner learns Anaris won't come back to him, he gets furious and rushes back to the lighthouse while saying things like nobody leaves Gruner, Gruner leaves. Friend attempts to approach the animals once again, But the youngster stumbles after being struck in the chest by a shot fired by Gruner from the lighthouse balcony. All the animals dive back into the sea, with the exception of Anaris, who hangs around for just a few moments longer to exchange glances with Friend. Furious, Friend makes his way back to the lighthouse and assaults Gruner for what he's done, but Gruner prevails. Alder Vigeland is not a murderer. Friend calls him in his real name as he prepares to attack him with an axe. As a result of hearing these words, Gruner repeats love, love, love before leaving the home and turning himself over to the animals. Friend hears them assaulting him and shuts the door after realizing he has lost Gruner and is now on his own. After some time has passed, 3 officials are seen attempting to wake up Friend, who is sound asleep on Gruner's old bed, within the lighthouse. They have come to replace Friend with a new weather official, and Friend doesn't refute them when they call him Gruner. They believe Friend is Gruner. Friend even claims that the weatherman died from typhus. While Friend walks out to the balcony and observes a number of ships in the distance, the officer in charge reprimands him for the condition of the room and tells him that they are at war. Anaris runs down the beach before diving back into the ocean, and this marks the end of the movie. Thanks for watching.